Okay. Hello, everybody. Good afternoon, and thank you for joining us today. My name is Vanessa Green, and I serve as the Executive Director for the Network of Oregon Watershed Councils. I will facilitate the webinar today on behalf of the Oregon Conservation Partnership, which offers a regular webinar series for training and information exchange among soil and water conservation districts, watershed councils, and land trusts here in Oregon. These webinars are offered with the support of the Oregon Watershed Enhancement Board, and we thank them for their support. And today we will be featuring OWEB's own Water and Climate Programs Coordinator, Jesse Kirschner, and the Board and Legislative Policy Coordinator, Eric Hartstein. They will be providing a presentation on the climate resolution that the OWEB Board adopted at their January 2022 meeting. And they will discuss upcoming public engagement opportunities on the resolution and how the input may inform agency rulemaking in adopting grant evaluation criteria related to climate. All of that said, it looks like you are all seasoned Zoom experts, so you've kept your microphones on mute, which is lovely. Let's hold our questions until the end, and then when they are taking questions, you can unmute yourself to ask if you have anything to say. Okay. All of that said, please feel free to use the chat function if you need to say anything offline, and I will turn it over to Eric and Jesse.
Great, thanks, Vanessa. And it's fantastic to be here. I see a lot of familiar faces and familiar names, and we're really happy to be providing this presentation. So let me share my screen and kick things off. So as Vanessa said, my name's Eric Hartstein. I'm the Board and Legislative Policy Coordinator at OWEB, and with me is Jesse Kirschner, who's our Water and Climate Programs Coordinator. So today, Jesse and I will be talking about the board climate resolution, the public engagement process that we have established for the resolution, and a little bit of a background on rulemaking here at OWEB. And we know that there are a lot of good insights and really excellent feedback that we've heard already on the resolution and questions on what it might hold for the future. But we'll ask you to hold off on those types of questions today, as there will be some good opportunities to provide those thoughts in the coming months, as you will soon hear about. But we are here today to answer questions on the engagement process itself. So first, a little background on the OWEB climate resolution. So in March of 2020, Governor Brown issued an executive order directing state agencies to take action to reduce and regulate greenhouse gas emissions and to integrate climate change impacts, and the state's greenhouse gas emissions reductions goals into agency planning, investing, and policymaking decisions. And then in April of that year, the OWEB board adopted a new committee structure, which included a climate committee to examine how OWEB grants contribute to climate resilience and to identify opportunities for the agency to make contributions towards Oregon's climate goals. Following the climate committee and board discussions, the OWEB staff developed a climate-related technical resources guide in July of last year to really summarize information about climate impacts in Oregon and to help provide some climate planning tools to assist OWEB grant applicants in finding relevant information for the project areas. For the fall 2021 open solicitation grant offering, applications included several non-evaluative questions around climate. And at about the same time, the board climate committee developed an OWEB climate statement of purpose and climate lens, with the intent of recognizing the impact of climate change on OWEB and outline actions towards addressing these impacts. And this was presented at the October board meeting. So following that board meeting, OWEB staff reformatted the statement into a resolution, which was then honed by the climate committee and presented to the full board as the climate resolution, which was then adopted at the board's January 22 meeting. So for the climate resolution itself, following some background statements, the document specifies how OWEB will address climate change. And that is to integrate climate mitigation and adaptation in budgeting, investing, and policymaking decisions, learn and apply diversity, equity, and inclusion and environmental justice principles when making funding decisions, and engage traditionally underrepresented and impacted communities in processes to craft meaningful solutions. And with that, I'm going to turn it over to Jesse now to discuss the climate resolution public engagement process that we're going to undertake.
Thanks, Eric. So following adoption of that resolution at the January meeting, we heard from a lot of stakeholders that they really wish that we would embark on a public engagement process to get more feedback and input from everyone before we initiate any kind of rulemaking for the resolution. So this is what we're doing now, is really kicking off this public engagement process. And so before I talk about the process itself and the different engagement opportunities, I just wanted to briefly go over our goals for the process. So the first is just to provide an overview of the climate resolution. I mean, many of you that are on this webinar have probably seen the resolution or familiar with it, but there are going to be other folks that we want to engage with that maybe aren't as familiar with it. And so through this public engagement process, the idea is just to provide a little bit of context and history, like Eric just did earlier, on how this resolution came to be and what the content of the resolution is. We also want to learn from stakeholders and tribes about the potential challenges and opportunities that are associated with the climate resolution. So as you think about the agency integrating, for example, climate mitigation and adaptation considerations into our grant evaluation criteria, what are some of the concerns or challenges that you see coming up, or what may be potential opportunities? So we really want to hear from you all as to what those potential challenges and opportunities might be. And then we want to use the feedback from this public engagement process to help inform considerations around rulemaking. So the idea is to gather all of this input and really analyze and summarize it and use that to inform rulemaking going forward. Next slide. So we're going to have multiple opportunities for engagement, and I'll talk a little bit more about each of these in subsequent slides, as will Eric. But we are going to be hosting six virtual public listening sessions. We also will be having an online survey. We'll be offering one-on-one conversations with OWEB staff. So for those stakeholders that aren't able to attend the public listening session or don't feel comfortable sharing their input in a public forum, or maybe aren't able to fill out the survey, we will have the opportunity for one-on-one conversations with staff if that's the preferred way of engagement. And then rulemaking also offers another opportunity for engagement. Next slide. So as I mentioned, we'll be hosting 6 different public listening sessions. These will be virtual, and we will have and share a Zoom registration link for these listening sessions. They'll be approximately 2 hours long, and they'll generally follow the format where we have introductory slides from OWEB staff that are followed by facilitated discussion with stakeholders. So the introductory slides will cover a lot of the same material that you're going to be seeing here today, where we have the resolution and then rulemaking. And these are going to be facilitated by an external facilitator, although OWEB staff will be attending all of these listening sessions. And then we're also inviting our board members to attend as well. Next slide. So these are the dates and times that we've identified for the listening sessions right now. As you can see, they start in mid-April and continue through mid-May. We've tried to pick a variety of times. So you'll see we have a couple of evening time slots, a couple of afternoon a morning and like a midday lunchtime kind of time frame. And these span different days of the week, primarily Tuesday, Wednesday, Thursday is what we're aiming for. But really, we just wanted to provide as wide a range of times and days as possible for people to be able to attend, depending on if it can be part of their working day or not. And in addition to these public listening sessions, just wanted to briefly mention that we are holding a separate tribal focus group listening session, which will likely take place in early May, sort of sandwiched between these public listening sessions. And we're currently working with tribes right now to pick that date and time. Next slide. So as I mentioned, we're also going to be having an online survey. This will cover generally the same content as the listening sessions. And it's really offered as an alternative avenue for stakeholders to share their input. So any kinds of concerns or challenges that you see with the resolution, ideas or opportunities, and just general feedback. The survey is anonymous. So again, if you don't feel comfortable sharing your input through a public listening session format, but you do want to make sure that it gets heard, the survey is going to be a way for you to provide those comments. Next slide. I think I turn it back over to Eric here to talk about rulemaking.
Great, thank you, Jesse. So as the climate resolution was developed, some of the conversations that occurred were around rulemaking. And I think some of you may have seen the staff report that accompanied the January board meeting resolution. It included talk of the Division 10 restoration grants, the administrative rules that they're associated with OWEB's administrative or the restoration grants. So the resolution itself doesn't mention OWEB's restoration grants, but we thought it would be important to link it here because it does talk about rulemaking in general. So the link here in the PowerPoint presentation will get you over to OWEB's administrative rules. So a little bit of process when it comes to rulemaking. So when the board does initiate rulemaking, OWEB will develop a rulemaking advisory committee or a RAC to help the agency craft the rules. And when rulemaking does commence, we'll be reaching out to include grantees on that RAC to help us develop the rule language. And as the draft rules are developed, there will also be ample opportunities for public participation and providing feedback on the proposed rule language. That will come in public hearing format, as well as an opportunity to provide written comment on the proposed rules. So a little bit about the timeline. So we have starting in January with the board passing climate resolution. We're kicking off the public engagement process here in March, and then through the spring, having the public listening sessions and the online survey that Jesse mentioned. And then when we get into June and July, we'll be analyzing and summarizing the feedback and presenting it to the OWEB board at the 2022 July board meeting. And tentatively, we're thinking that rulemaking would begin in September. So with that, we would really like to, for you to invite your partners, implementers, contractors, stakeholders, really anyone interested in this process to attend the listening sessions, fill out the survey, or even participate on our RAC. We really want to get that good public engagement throughout this entire process. And I think that's it. There it is. for our presentation. I'd be happy to answer any questions. Again, focused on really the process itself when it comes to public engagement, not so much as to, if you have questions or comments around the actual climate resolution. So I'll stop there and stop sharing my screen. Okay, let's see a hand up from Christopher.
Thank you. Thank you for bringing us up to date on this process. My question is pretty simplistic. For anybody that chooses as say a local district participates on the RAC, what amount of time would that entail for an individual? And then also, when will the actual rules go into effect and have an effect on grant applications?
Yeah, excellent questions. Thank you, Christopher. Maybe your second question first. If we do kick off rulemaking in September, it's typically a 6 to 9 month endeavor. I don't want to put a hard timeline on it, particularly when it comes to rules, when it comes to adding evaluation criteria with climate. That could take some time in both crafting the rules and then incorporating that public input. But sticking within that 6 to 9 month time frame is probably pretty accurate when it comes to the rulemaking process. For RAC, it's generally within that same time frame. Depending on how things go, it could be, in the past we've done 4 meetings, 5, 6, once a month. It really kind of depends on how the process is going and if we're getting good agreement on the rule language itself.
Thank you.
Other questions?
Eric, Jesse, thanks again for having us on today. I had to step away for a moment and maybe I missed it. Jesse, you gave us the dates and times for those 6 listening sessions. Is an email going to come out so we can share that with partners and contractors and stuff as well?
Yes, we will. We're putting together right now sort of a 1-page overview of the process that'll have those dates and times, that will have the registration link and a link to the survey. So all of it will be just on a 1-page thing that you can send out to people as to help encourage attendance.
Okay, thanks. Sorry if I missed that, but I appreciate it.
Dan.
Yeah, I noticed you focused it to restoration types of grants, but it seems that criteria could also apply to a number of other grants that you offer. Was there a reason for narrowing it to that, or is this just a first step?
Yeah, sorry, I should have been clearer there. We talked about the restoration grants, administrative rules and criteria around there, and that's ultimately where the board might choose to go. But if you look at the resolution itself, it's broader, and it says adding evaluation criteria to OWEB's grants. So there may be a focus on restoration, or it may be broader. We just don't know at this point.
Okay.
Okay. Well, not seeing other questions. As Jesse stated, we will be sending out via Gov Delivery, a summary of how the public engagement process will occur. We'll also have information up on our website. And in the meantime, I would say don't hesitate to contact either one of us. If you do have questions, we're available to talk one-on-one. And again, I want to thank Vanessa for the space and time, and all of you for joining us today. Thank you.
Thank you, Eric and Jesse. And I will be posting this probably tomorrow on the Oregon Conservation Partnership website in the webinars tab, so you can look for it there. And for watershed councils, I will also be sending these out to you, especially the dates and times in a dedicated email. Thank you, everyone. Appreciate your time, and we'll do this again next month with a different topic. Okay, thanks all.
Thank you.